Hey everybody, I am back with a part 2 to Hips Do Lie, my Hips Do Lie video regarding Tim Norman. This is my Instagram and Twitter information. This is my email and other information if you guys want to get in touch with me or support the channel. So let's get into it because I was able to read the complaint against both Tim Norman and his co-conspirator, Terica Ellis. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you probably want to go ahead and watch the first video that I posted. But if you are familiar with Sweetie Pies, you know who this is. This is Tim Norman. He is the only living son of Miss Robbie, who owns Sweetie Pies. Remember, it was on the OWN network for several years. It was very, very, very successful. And because of their visibility on the OWN network, they were able to open up several locations. Now, Miss Robbie would actually go on to sue Tim because he was stealing money from his own mama. And now we can see that that's not too far-fetched because of what he is accused of doing to his own nephew. Okay. Miss Robbie also sued him because he was basically going out here opening restaurants and using the Sweetie Pies trademark without her consent. Okay. So, as you know, a couple of days ago, Tim was arrested for conspiring a murder for hire plot against his own nephew, Andre Montgomery. You might remember Andre on the show. And I remember this episode. This was after Andre died. He was killed. He was murdered. And Miss Robbie and Tim were going back to the location in which he was killed. And I saw this whole clip on Twitter earlier today, and I just thought how psychopathic this man has to be to go back to the scene in which his nephew was murdered, knowing that he set it up, going back there with his mother, her grandson being shot and killed on this street. And not only was her grandson shot and killed on Natural Bridge, but this Tim goes on. If you find the clip, I'll see if I can post the clip. I'll try under the link or something like that. But Tim going on to say and pretend that he was so sad that this had happened on Natural Bridge because not only did they lose Andre on Natural Bridge Avenue, but his own father was killed on Natural Bridge as well as another family member. So I watched this clip and thought to myself, what a psychopath you have to be to pretend to be so broken up about what happened, knowing what we know now, that he was responsible for setting his nephew up to be killed on Natural Bridge Avenue. And I was thinking about it, and I thought to myself, now, you know, Chicago, every time you hear about Chicago, you think about, oh my God, somebody got killed and stuff like that. But St. Louis also has crime, you know, some, murder. I don't know if it's a high murder rate, but they have a lot of like kind of activity like that as well. And so I'm thinking to myself, did Tim set this up over there because it would go unnoticed? Because he knows that St. Louis has their own issues with crime like this and their own issues with murders and stuff like that. Black men killing other black men and stuff like that. So I almost feel like he set it up so that it would just be another one of those unfortunate, a black man killing another black man. And it would just go unnoticed. And he played it out, right? He played the sympathy card, allowed cameras to follow him and his mother as they visited the place, the street that Andre was killed. And just how sick one has to be to allow just to even this whole thing to play out, right? So yesterday, when all this news broke, we heard that he basically had tried to put out a $450,000 policy on his nephew, right? 2 years before the murder. Now, this is his co-conspirator, Terica Ellis. Terica is the one that Andre was supposedly meeting. This is the person that Tim conspired with to bait Andre. And she, as I'll read in the complaint, because I'm going to read the complaint against her. Okay, I'm going to read the whole thing out to you guys. Okay, so bear with me as I do this. But Terica was at the scene or within that area when Andre was killed. Okay, and so the feds were able to pretty much piece this whole thing together and to conclude that Tim and this woman right here, Terica, she's from Memphis, Tennessee, she's a stripper, conspired to kill Andre and cash in on this $450,000 policy. Okay, and as I'll show you later, this is just a picture of Sid and her. They don't know each other. I think this was on Twitter, and I saw like, okay, I just think that this is a fan thing. I don't necessarily think they know each other and stuff like that, right? How they set this up, and then this woman would go on to open her own. She has her own little business. Okay, she would go on to have plastic surgery after this young man was murdered. Okay, and to basically go ahead and live her life. It's just a very sad and disgusting thing. And I went back over Tim's Instagram pictures and stuff like that because his page is still open, and his page is still open. Tim's page is still open, and he doesn't have anything about Andre on there, which I just thought that was weird. Like you would think that he would have a little something on his page regarding his nephew, but he doesn't. All right. So I'm going to show you. This is Alexis the Great. She goes by Alexis the Great on Instagram. And this is hers, as you can see. And look who follows her business page. Right? It's now private, but look who follows it. So as I read this complaint to you guys, it's a little lengthy, but just bear with me. Tim is going to be referred to as conspirator 1. They're not going to say his name or use Tim Norman. They're going to say her name, but not use his name. So when you hear me say conspirator 1, that means that they are referring to Tim Norman in here. So this is the criminal complaint against Terica Ellis. Okay. And they list the date of the murder, which is March 14. So this just kind of, the top isn't super important. But I want to start reading the bottom to you guys. It says, on March 14, 2016, at approximately 8:02 p.m., Andre Montgomery, hereinafter Montgomery, was killed by gunfire at 3964 Natural Bridge Avenue, which is located in the city of St. Louis within the Eastern District of Missouri. Okay, so as I talk about this, they'll only talk about him as in Montgomery. They won't really say Andre Montgomery, okay? And so they're going to get into, it says, Montgomery's telephone was located in close proximity to his body and was forensically examined following the murder. Witnesses at the scene of the homicide indicated that Montgomery went outside to meet someone after receiving the telephone call and was shot and killed shortly thereafter. The forensic examination of Montgomery's phone and subsequent investigation revealed that the two people he spoke to within the 10 minutes prior to his death were his friend KT and someone later identified to be Terica Ellis, utilizing phone number blah, blah, blah. They're going to call her Ellis, phone number 1. Ellis' phone number 1 had been saved in Montgomery's telephone under the contact name Alexis the Great. Between 8 o'clock and 8:02 p.m., witness KT advised that while speaking with Montgomery, he or she heard at least one female voice in the background before the call disconnected. As further described herein, the location information associated with Ellis' phone number 1 put the phone in the vicinity of the murder at the time of the murder occurred. Further investigation also revealed that Ellis was a prepaid cell phone that was activated the day of the murder, then ceased all activity the following day on March 15, 2020. In attempting to identify Alexis the Great, ultimately identified as Terica Ellis, investigators also identified communications in Montgomery's telephone with the cellular telephone number, blah, blah, blah. In a text message dated Sunday, March 6, 2016, the owner of Ellis phone number 2 advised Montgomery that she was on her way back to Memphis and would be in St. Louis on Thursday, March 10th. In a text message dated March 14th, that's the day he died, Montgomery asked the owner, Ellis, to identify her Instagram, okay? And Montgomery received a response of Alexis the Great from Ellis, phone number 2. Okay, so basically what they're saying is that she turned the phone off the day after he was killed. On the day of the homicide at 2:42 p.m., Montgomery received a text message from Ellis phone number 1 telling him to delete the other number and to start using Ellis phone number 1 instead. This led investigators to believe that Ellis phone number 1, saved as Alexis the Great in Montgomery's phones, and Ellis phone number 2 were both being used by the same person. As described herein, investigators later identified this person as Terica Ellis. Through a subpoena to Instagram for information relative to the Alexis the Great account, investigators learned that the Alexis the Great account had a registered email address of tericaellis@gmail.com. Investigators located an email message in Montgomery's cellular telephone from the email address tericaellis@gmail.com that was dated March 10, 2016, in which Terica Ellis advised Montgomery, "I'm on my way in town," which is consistent with the information she provided to Montgomery in the aforementioned text messages. Through follow-up investigation, the investigative team learned that Ellis maintained a primary residence in Memphis, Tennessee, and occasionally traveled to St. Louis, Missouri. In the minutes after Montgomery's murder, location information associated with the prepaid Ellis phone number 1 showed the phone heading south on Interstate 55 before ceasing activity in Memphis, Tennessee the following day. And then a search warrant was served on the tericaellis@gmail account. All right. And it said the same number that had contacted Montgomery and advised him that her Instagram account was Alexis the Great on March 14th, 2016. So as you can see, the feds have all this information and they're able to kind of piece it together. And the fact that the phone that she was using was in the same area. Okay, let's keep going here. In examining the victim's familial and social connections, investigators subsequently discovered that in October 2014, Conspirator 1, that's Tim, attempted to obtain a $250,000 life insurance policy for which he was the sole beneficiary on Montgomery through Americo. 2 weeks later, Conspirator 1 attempted to obtain a second life insurance policy on Montgomery in the amount of $200,000, in addition to an accidental death rider in the amount of $250,000 through Forrester's Insurance. This Forrester's policy issued listing Conspirator 1 as the sole beneficiary, and Conspirator 1 paid the monthly premiums directly from Conspirator 1's checking account. In March of 2015, Conspirator 1 attempted to obtain a replacement policy on Montgomery in the amount of $249,999, but the application was denied. 4 days after Montgomery's murder, a man identifying himself as Conspirator 1 and using a phone number known to belong to Conspirator 1 called Forrester's in an attempt to collect on the policy. Despite several additional efforts to collect on the policy since Montgomery's murder, Forrester's has yet to pay out on the policy due to Conspirator 1's failure to provide several requested documents. Okay, and then it goes into the subpoenas. They subpoenaed the phone number, identified 2 phone numbers for Conspirator 1, and then the review of toll records determined that Ellis's phone number 1 was primarily in contact with Montgomery and another cellular device with the number blah, 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 Conspirator number 3 on the day of Montgomery's murder. Records indicate that both Ellis phone number 1 and Conspirator phone number 3 were prepaid phones that were activated on the day of Montgomery's murder, blah, blah, blah. All right, then we go on. Location information was obtained for Conspirator 1's 2 known phones, phone number 1 and Conspirator phone number 2, and compared to the location information from Conspirator phone number 3, which Ellis was primarily in contact on the day of Montgomery's murder. Investigators determined that Conspirator 1 was using Conspirator phone number 3 based on the location data for that phone following the location data for Conspirator phone number 1 and Conspirator phone number 2. Ellis was communicating with Conspirator number 1 in the time of surrounding Montgomery's murder. Despite being at the scene of Montgomery's murder at 8:02 p.m., Ellis's first phone call was not to the police, but rather to Conspirator 1 at 8:03, at which her phone location showed that she was driving in a direction consistent with her returning to her home in Memphis, Tennessee. In the time surrounding Montgomery's murder, precision location information associated with Conspirator phone number 3 showed that the phone traveled from St. Louis, Missouri to Los Angeles, California, where investigators know Conspirator 1 to have resided. Flight records obtained by investigators determined that Conspirator 1 flew from Los Angeles, California to St. Louis, Missouri on March 13, 2016, the day before Montgomery's murder, landing around midnight on March 14th, and then flew back to Los Angeles, landing in the early mornings of March 15, 2016. And it shows his travel records that he made a one-night only reservation to stay at the Chase Park Plaza, a hotel located in the Central West End neighborhood of the city of St. Louis, on the night of March 13th, 2016. And then it kind of gets into location data from both conspirator, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's wrap this up. A review of toll records and text communication to Montgomery's phone revealed that Montgomery texted Ellis's phone number 1, the address of the house where he was ultimately murdered at 7:07 p.m. on March 14, 2016. At 7:07 p.m., Ellis also placed a phone call to conspirator phone number 3. On March 15, 2016, the day after Montgomery's homicide, Ellis deposited $3,020 in U.S. currency into her checking account at the Orange Mound branch of the First Horizon Tennessee Bank in Memphis, Tennessee. And prior to this deposit, her checking account actually had a balance of negative $299.83 after multiple overdraft charges. On the same day, Ellis also deposited $4,340 into a savings account opened the day at the same bank in Memphis, Tennessee, for a total of $7,360 in cash deposits. On March 17, she deposited an additional $1,900 in U.S. currency into her checking account at the same bank. Other than the other cash deposit in the amount of $100, no other cash deposits were made to Ellis's account in all of 2016. All right. And then it kind of wraps up here. It says, on April 30 of 2016, Conspirator 1, that's Tim, sent Terica Ellis, $700 in U.S. currency via Western Union. Okay, so I know I kind of skipped over a few parts. I was trying to do as best I can. I hope I got through it. I hope you guys understood it. I know I was reading kind of fast, all right? But I hope what you got out of it is that basically they bought burner phones, right? And they were communicating with each other throughout this whole thing. So she basically was in the spot or in the location in which this young man here, Andre Montgomery, was murdered. And then instead of calling the police, right, when he was murdered, she calls Tim. Tim gets out of town the next day. She gets out of town pretty much the same night. She heads back to Memphis, Tennessee. And next thing you know, money is put into her account. And a few days after the fact, Tim is trying to cash in on these policies. So this is just a whole freaking mess. All right. And I'm guessing, now this is Andre's sister, who I saw on Instagram. And when this happened yesterday, I guess when all of this stuff came out about it, she posted, she said, punk ass in, we already knew it. And then she said, karma MF, he will get it, right? And so Andre's family was reacting to this whole thing. But it's just so crazy to me that they did this to this young man. Now, you know, look at the date here. This is from Tim's Instagram. March 14, 2017. You know how when somebody dies, a year anniversary, we'll post about them. This is what he posted on March 14th. Remember, Dre was killed on March 14, 2016. This is all Tim posted the year. It was literally a year. The year anniversary of his nephew's death. This is what he posted on his Instagram. I told you, when I looked on his Instagram, there's nothing of Dre over there, right? And I got some other stuff from Gossip in the City. You know, she make people pay for the tea. I just pulled it, but this is from her. Look at the date here. This is from Terica, March 13, 2016. This is a day before Dre was killed. She has hustle mode on, okay? So she already knew what was up. She already knew what she was about to do. She already knew that she was about to set this boy up for some money, okay? With negative $200 and something in her account. And look what she posted a couple of days after this child's murder. March 17, 2016. Out enjoying life. Like I said, I got this from courtesy of Gossip in the City. So just, y'all some sick ass people. This kid was murdered. All right. She posted before he was murdered. This is what she posted after he was murdered. Tim don't have nothing of his nephew on his page. A year after he was killed, you posting some stuff about Tupac. Usually people must post like, man, it's been a year since so-and-so passed away. You know, I'm still missing you. No, Tim ain't got nothing on there. And then when you go back and you watch that video of him pretending to be mourning with his mother, it just shows you how sick and twisted this man is. So this is just crazy to me that he set up his nephew and tried to take out basically a accident policy out on this kid 2 years prior to his murder. So he had been setting this up all along. So now the question begs, who was the shooter? Because we still don't see that part of it, right? They're co-conspirators in a murder for hire, but now that's the one remaining question out there is who killed Dre, right? Who killed Dre, right? And that he was but the feds got these two. The feds got these two, right? They in jail probably with no bond at this point. But now, like I said, they gonna have to talk. So who killed Dre though, right? Because you know they probably more than likely hired somebody and thought they would get away with it because they were probably in a high crime area, so nobody would know. It would just be another, black dude getting shot, right? Nothing out of the ordinary about that. But they probably, they probably bought burner phones, using credit cards, just dumb, just dumbass criminals. And I'm so glad that his ass got caught. I'm so glad. The truth always prevails. The truth always comes out. And I am so glad. But I feel really, really bad for Miss Robbie, who, like I said, lost her grandson, lost her first son, and now her son going back to jail for having her grandson killed over some money that he didn't even get to cash in on because his dumb ass didn't even have the documentation to do it. So that's what his ass get, and I hope he rots in prison for what he has done. This is just sad, but I wanted to read the criminal complaint to you guys so that you guys can just get a little bit more information about this whole thing. But let me know what you guys think about this whole thing. And leave your comments down below. And just tell me what you guys think about this whole thing and the whole complaint in itself. And I will, of course, see you guys on the next video. Take care, y'all.